Good afternoon, everyone. I can't ask you if everyone can hear me, but I'm just going to assume that everyone can hear me. This is my first webcast since a long time, so it's always a little bit getting used to again. All right. Welcome to this introduction of ALOps, like we always say internally. I did not expect so many people to sign up. Actually, 100 people have signed up for this webcast. So I hope for all of you this will be useful as an introduction to the product that I will be introducing. Maybe a few housekeeping rules. First of all, I'm Erik Wouters. Some might know me as Waldo. Today, I'm not really the community guy, and I basically will explain you a little bit on what ALOps can do for you. So I'm more kind of like a sales guy today, which personally I have some problems with. But in any case, the product that I will be talking about, ALOps, did actually, it was caused by the community to make that into a product. And I will tell you a little bit more about that at a later point. The moderator today is going to be Bart. Bart is very involved. He's actually our main developer for ALOps. And he will be answering questions. So there is no audio. You cannot talk back to me, but there is a private chat. And whatever you type as questions, or if you have questions, please type them in the private chat, and Bart will have a look at it and answer right away. At the end of the recording, yes, it is going to be a recording, so everything that I will tell you today will be made available as a recording to you as well. And if possible, we will upload it to YouTube as well. In any case, at the end of this webcast, I will address some questions if Bart has made them available to me to address them publicly as well. Okay, so let's start. Let's start maybe with the goals of ALOps. The thing is, ALOps, it all started actually with previous year that when I did a session on DevOps and how we did DevOps in our company, Facto. Actually a lot of people came to me after the session, and actually they wanted the same scripts and stuff that we did on the marketplace. And that's where we got thinking, okay, how can we make that possible? So we want to make DevOps accessible for everyone. And that kind of like means make it as easy as at all possible to do whatever needs to be done for AL or for Business Central in DevOps. Supported by the community, we want to make it as open as at all possible. In fact, all questions, all issues, it's actually all just available through a GitHub repository that I will share in a minute. It needs to be affordable. In fact, yeah, it cannot be free. I mean, we put a lot of work in it, and what we want, obviously, is to get that out at least, and to be able to support the product as at all possible. You will see what I mean in a minute. It needs to be robust. I don't want breaking builds of my own. I can definitely understand that you would not want breaking builds at your place. So we need to make it as robust as at all possible. And it needs to be version independent. My scripts need to run on the newest version of Business Central, but also on version 2018, for instance. Okay, so these are the goals. Why DevOps? Well, as an introduction, that's always a good question. Why would I do DevOps? Well, basically, when you compare CAL development with AL development, it's quite different. What we did with CAL development is that we basically were working on one database, one development database, and multiple developers. That is not possible anymore when you compare that with AL development. With AL, you have a set of files somewhere on a system, probably your laptop, that you're developing against. And if you develop a team, then you have multiple sets of files that at some point needs to be migrated together. And that's what we basically call continuous integration. But just imagine that I'm developing a big feature and someone else is developing lots of small features. Probably when I need to continuously check if my development basically still works, right? That's the concept, continuous integration. And obviously, when everything still compiles, compile would be one of the checks that needs to be done, then I also need to test it. Did my functionality work, or does my functionality work? In terms of DevOps, we talk about builds and releases at that point. In terms of any kind of software, we talk about mature software development. It's much more than source control, obviously. It is basically working in team. Now, when we look a little bit deeper on what continuous integration or that build could mean for us, well, it's not just compile, right? The fact that your code would compile is not an assurance that your code works. Testability, automated tests is, again, not an assurance, but at least you're that more sure that your code will work, right? Code analysis. I, for instance, or we at our company have been applying code analysis for a number of reasons. For instance, to measure complexity of the code and stuff like that. And the less complex you keep your code, the more maintainable it will be. So these are all checks that you can build in as part of what we call in DevOps a pipeline. Like if you would try to integrate your code with your coworkers, with your colleagues, these are kind of like these checks that you want to execute. When we look at releases, from the moment we are able to build that app for you, that all checks have passed, then obviously you want to deploy that somewhere. And it all starts with deploy that to a staging or a test database or something like that. Or deploy that to a production environment when all tests have passed and yeah, things were approved. Yeah, or maybe you would like to implement a manual approval. A manual approval on the technical side, where you would do a code review, or a manual approval on the functional side, where you would basically just test functionality. And any kind of way, you need to be very flexible on that. And you can already guess what needs to be done is tasks has to be executed, validated, approved. And it's these tasks that actually ALOps can come into play. So we like to think that there are quite some benefits with ALOps, obviously. So you can also deploy with ALOps. That's maybe not the best thing to start with, because by deployment it's at the end of the cycle. But do keep in mind that it's not just all builds. You need to deploy somewhere, and that needs to be included in your DevOps steps as well. I cannot imagine personally that I would deploy my app or my set of apps, my set of multiple dependent apps, one by one with VS Code at the customer side. I cannot imagine working like that. I mean, just multiply that by 300 customers. If you would have a lot of customers, you're not going to sign in at the customer to a server, upload an app, and start deploying with whatever PowerShell or that's going to take a lot of time. No, that needs to be automated. That's the release pipeline. You need to be able to use DevOps for that. And from the moment you approve a certain app, approve a certain release, or whatever, how you set it up, a certain stage, that it gets deployed. And that needs to be automated and can be automated with DevOps. And ALOps is part of that. ALOps can deploy for you. It can deploy on SaaS. It can deploy on-prem. Maintenance, obviously, makes your maintenance of your apps easier. And we take care of the maintenance of everything that has to do with the steps within DevOps. So when there is a new version of Business Central, we'll make sure that all the steps work on that new version and obviously maintain the backward compatibility. ALOps works with YAML, which basically is the, let's call it the setup file to set up the build pipeline, the release pipeline, or whatever you want to do within DevOps. ALOps supports YAML. Should be version independent. Again, a little bit the same as the maintenance, but and if you publish an app, we will take care of the version. If it is on 2018, we will take care of the 2018 app deployment. If it's kind of like a new version of Business Central, we will take care of that. We also implemented advanced logging, or at least what we call advanced logging, because we know that's very important for you, that when there is a problem, that we give you all the information that you need to solve that problem. Either it can be when your app does not compile, for instance, we need to log the actual compiler message, right? So you know that what problem it is. But it's more than that. If you cannot build a container, we try to give you as much as at all possible information. One example is, for instance, we built in the ability to import apps that are part of the container, of a Docker container. Within that step, we give you all apps that we were able to find within that container. So if you would want to install an app, that at least you have the name of the app that you can provide in the YAML file to install that app. ALOps is also a proven technology. I mean, we have been using this internally for almost 2 years now. And we already have quite some customers that already using this on a daily basis. In fact, we are close to 400 builds a day with ALOps at this point. So that's quite immense. We make sure that we do not break. Now, obviously, we can never assure that. I mean, we do our utmost best, and I just wanted to point that out, how we do our best for that. At this point, obviously, the building of ALOps, the product, the marketplace extension, also is part of the DevOps pipeline. And the build of that pipeline, the integration test that we do is actually already 12 hours of testing. So any kind of bug that we come across, we build scenarios that we retest and retest every single time we do another change, resulting actually that we already have hundreds of scenarios that we test every single little change that we provide to ALOps. So this is also why how we maintain that backward compatibility. ALOps is actually constantly building ALOps. And for everyone. And what I mean with that is we really want to make that available for everyone. And some of you might know me as a PowerShell guy. Yes, I love PowerShell. I like PowerShell. And I kind of like ALOps is a way for me to do the PowerShell for you. Right. So if you want to do DevOps without ALOps, you would need quite a lot of Docker knowledge. Sorry, that was Dutch. Quite a lot of YAML knowledge, and quite a lot of PowerShell knowledge. And what ALOps can do for you is basically remove the need to know too much of Docker and remove the need to know too much of PowerShell, because we will do the PowerShell for you on top of Docker, right? I mentioned Docker here, but do know that, sorry, I accidentally pressed a key here. Do know that Docker is not required. ALOps also is able to build or do whatever task without Docker. Okay, but it makes too much of sense to work with Docker anyway lately. So, but going back to this slide, is that ALOps can take away that complexity. The only thing that you need to know is how to set up your YAML file with ALOps tasks. And again, we will dive into that in a minute. And that's basically it. In a way, you should not execute any kind of PowerShell, and at least delete that knowledge. Don't delete knowledge of PowerShell, keep that. It probably will come in handy. In any case, when you see a lot of builds or a lot of YAML files in the community or at partners that's already started with this, probably they are executing lots of steps of the same type, which is the PowerShell step, right? And with a lot of arguments. And when you, for instance, look at this one, this is the create build container step, which is a PowerShell step, which is basically, in this case, a create container script that is being executed. And obviously, I need to provide some parameters. And you will see that providing parameters is challenging, especially with within YAML. So any kind of parameter, I need to provide version, maybe the version of the container, the credentials that I need to provide in some way. And you'll see that this is not that readable. This is very flexible. Obviously, this is basically just one step where you can do everything with. It's PowerShell. But it's not readable, and that makes it less maintainable. Just imagine that you have multiple customers, and probably you do not have to imagine that. You do have multiple customers, so you have multiple pipelines. And per customer, you probably have multiple pipelines as well, because one customer needs to be able to build against the current version, and maybe against the next version, and maybe against the next major version, especially, for instance, this is customers, but also for ISV products. Any kind of product needs to, in my opinion, build at least 4 times a day against my current version that I build against the current version that is released by Microsoft, against the next version that will be released by Microsoft, and against the next major version that will be released in fall or in spring. So that's multiple builds. So that's multiple parameters. So that's multiple ways to set things up. Coming back to how to set it up is obviously YAML, and let's hope to make that as easy as at all possible. Now, compare this YAML description with the one that we do. So we do not use like a generic step in DevOps like PowerShell is, but a very specific step in DevOps with parameters. So in this case, where we can provide a Docker image and Docker pull, and the rest we will take care of. Another example is the publish app step. Again, perfectly possible with PowerShell. Do know that it's all PowerShell in the background. ALOps is all PowerShell in the background. But you do not set up PowerShell steps like this one. The AL step would be called like ALOps app publish, where we indicate some kind of filter where we will search it, so like in this case a base app, and skip verification. And even more, if I'm setting this up in DevOps, I would be able to use IntelliSense. You see here just an example on setting up this task in DevOps, and I'm able to use IntelliSense. Obviously, this is totally not possible when you're setting up PowerShell steps. In PowerShell step, the IntelliSense would show you arguments, and then you have some text to provide the arguments, and that is kind of a lot of more difficult to set up. All right. So how to get started? Well, don't buy licenses yet. Not yet. You can just start, download from the marketplace, and that's it. You can already implement ALOps in the marketplace and just execute on your private or public repositories. Okay, I will dive into this because this is basically what the webcast is all about. I will show you how to get started, and then it's time for me to dive into a little practical part. And that's basically how to get going with ALOps. And you'll see it's going to be quite easy. The first thing is to make all the steps that we built available in your DevOps account. And for that, we built a DevOps extension so that you can just download from the marketplace. So let me show you that real quick. In my, I obviously already did this, right? So I have a DevOps subscription, let's say, and I already have 3 organizations. This is what I mean with organization. Now, a lot of partners just use one organization. Okay, so I just set up one for these webinars. So I will take this one, and in this one, I created just one project. This project is the introduction project, right? That's not really what I wanted to show. I want to make my or ALOps available in this organization. And the easiest way to do that is simply by going to the marketplace. Now, sorry, I actually don't have to go through here. There is a marketplace button here on the top right, and you can browse the marketplace. You obviously end up in the Azure DevOps marketplace. By the way, very interesting to read through these possibilities. There are a lot of extensions that you can already install into your DevOps subscription or organization, and some of them do make sense. I might blog about that at some point. In any case, let's focus on ALOps. So if you search for ALOps, you end up with this beautiful logo. And the only thing that you need to do is just get. It might be that you are not an administrator of your account. Then your administrator will get an email, or at least you need to ask for permissions to get this extension installed in DevOps. If you are an administrator, it will be very simple, and you will see that I already installed this one. There we go. You should just select the organization you want to install it to, and you'll see that in my case, it's already installed. What you will see in DevOps, and let me go back to my account. You can just not browse marketplace, but go to your extensions, and you will see in your installed that ALOps is installed. Now, very quickly, what this means is I made the steps that we built available for any kind of pipeline, for the release or the build pipeline. I can quickly check that. If I would quickly create a new build pipeline, I would just create it with the classic editor. Let me create an empty job, and you will see here now, if I would create a new step for this job, that the ALOps steps here are available now to me. Yeah, and I would be able to add these steps and configure them. Compared with PowerShell, if I would add another step here, PowerShell is actually just another step. So instead of using one and the same step, you now have quite a lot of steps available for you to define your pipeline. Okay, that's actually what you did by installing ALOps to your DevOps organization. Okay, I'm not going to save this pipeline, obviously. That's it. You see, that's easy. So the second step is a little bit less easy. You do know when we are compiling. Now, compiling is the best example I get, but obviously also running tests. It needs to run somewhere. You need to have a Business Central instance running. And obviously, when you think of a running Business Central instance, hopefully you're also thinking of Docker, because it's very easy with Docker to set up any kind of version, any kind of localization. And obviously, when we look into build pipelines, just imagine an ISV product, but also a customer. you want to run that against multiple versions, multiple localizations. And yeah, Docker is kind of like the way to do that. Now, this Docker needs to run somewhere, needs to be installed somewhere where that I can use, or at least that DevOps can use for my code to compile against, for my code to run tests. So I need this agent. I need this server that runs that. So that is, I see in a lot of partners, the most difficult part actually to set up. And actually, it's just the server. I see a lot of people that basically just run an Azure machine, just a normal Azure VM, and that's it. Vanilla Windows Server is enough. Okay, you don't have to have anything special. Obviously, you need to have some virtualization, because what we will be doing while running a pipeline is we will set up some kind of container. Let's call it a Docker container. So yeah, you need to enable that virtualization. You need to be able to do that. Okay, this is an example. Actually, Bart set this up yesterday. This is just not even in a domain. Just a server somewhere with internet access. And obviously, we need internet access to be able to get to Docker and the Docker images. Yeah. So how do we make this into a DevOps agent? First of all, we need to prepare that a little bit. And you see here, I've got the script install Docker, and you will see it's going to be the only PowerShell you will see today. And it's just PowerShell to install Docker. You see 4 lines. It's quite easy. I made this available for you. So yeah, this is a link that I still have to show. I talked about the GitHub that ALOps basically is community, or you get community support. Well, that community support is actually on our GitHub. So whenever you have an issue, just browse the issues, and this is where we, out in the open, it is community, manage our issues. So what we also have here is documentation. And in the installation folder, I actually have provided that same script. So here you can find that script that I will be running. I actually already ran on your server. That is step 1. Prepare it with Docker. Okay. So do execute it line per line, because after this line, you will need a restart. And it takes you this line to the parameter restart. It will automatically restart. And then just execute these one by one. I also execute always a Docker pull, so that from whenever I run my first pipeline on the server, it is already a little bit faster, because the base layers of my Docker containers are already being downloaded. I already did this. I'm not going to execute this again. So that basically means that I have Docker running on this server. Okay. Now this needs to act like a DevOps agent. So kind of like my DevOps account here needs to be able to use that server as an agent to run pipelines, like compile and run tests. Okay. So that's actually the next thing that we will do. What we can do is browse to our organization settings, and you will see here agent pools. I already have foreseen one pool here, the Waldo pool. Basically, it's just a collection of agents. You see that I already have one agent running. This agent is running on another machine, by the way, and did not disable that. I enabled that. What we would be able to do is create another. So I already have created here. You can create just, sorry, wrong button. You can create a pool here. Now, what is a pool? A pool is a collection of multiple servers or agents that are waiting for any kind of tasks that needs to be executed from your DevOps organization. Okay. So I actually prepared already this pool, and yeah, you see that it's actually quite easy. Just from ISV pool or whatever you want to call that. Doesn't really matter, just a name of a collection. Now in this product X pool, I do not have any agents. Nothing is running. It's just an empty pool, right? So I want to create my server here as being a new agent in this pool. And you can already guess, let's click new agents. And the first thing you have to do, just download. And you see here, you will get a zip file. And this zip file that I want to get to that server. So let me just show you that real quick. Download that zip file. Maybe not that quick because you see the download rate is not that immense. Maybe let's speed that a little bit up, and I can copy this one URL and download that straight to our server. Let's download that to the downloads folder, and hopefully that's a little bit, it's much faster. Servers do have better internet connection, apparently, than I have. All right, so here is my downloaded zip file. Do not forget to unblock this zip file. So properties, unblock the zip file. Very important, else you probably will not unpack all files. Now I will extract the zip file. And what I usually do, I just put it in the root. I'm actually now extracting all the files that is necessary from Devops, let's say, to connect to my Devops account. Now, okay, so now you have here my my extracted directory from the download that basically I just did from my pool. Okay. Now I need to configure that. And you will see that I execute this. I need to provide some input. So, okay, I'm setting up a DevOps agent, but this agent needs to connect to some kind of URL, some kind of server, some kind of DevOps account, some kind of, let's call it, organization. So what I will do, I will copy that URL. I want this DevOps agents to connect to my webinars organization. So let's copy this one and paste it here. Next, I need an authentication type. Not everyone should just be able to, or not every agent should just be able to connect to it. It needs to be secured. And I will use a personal access token for this. So yes, I will use a personal access token. And to create a personal access token, I can go within my DevOps and with the right permissions, obviously, but I'm an administrator, so I'm able to do this. I can go to personal access tokens. Just create a new token. Don't mind multiple tokens that you are creating. It doesn't mess up anything. This is going to be the webinar one. And by default, it's 30 days. I usually custom define it to as long as I'm able to do that, which is 1 year. So next year. So this access token will exist for a full year and I will have full access. I will copy that access token and paste it where I need it. Okay. If you want to save the access token, well, let's do that, because when you want to uninstall your let's say, agent, it's best to save the access token as well. Then you can do a clean uninstall. Now I need to provide the agent pool. Now I called it product X. I can check again. Let's go to my pools, agent pools. And yes, this is actually the pool that I want to create my agent in. So let's copy this one and provide it as the pool. And it needs a name. I find server name quite descriptive, so I will just keep the server name and press enter. And this is it. Now it sets up the agent. I need to provide my working folder. I also just provide the underscore work folder. That basically means when it needs to set up temporary files, it will use this directory, which makes sense in my opinion, and it will create an underscore work folder. So it will download the source files there, and it will basically just compile there, create the artifact there, and whatever it needs to save locally for a minute, it will basically do that in the working folder. And then as the last step, I want to run this as an agent. Yes. And I will just create a network service as being my user. And I will see here that the underscore work folder has been created. Basically, my agent is now set up. Even more, when I switch here to agents, you will see now that I have an agent running. It is enabled and it is online. It's basically waiting for tasks. All right, this is not enough. We noticed that sometimes it's better to run that as a local system account. So usually you will see this is now being created. So this is the server service, the Azure Pipelines agent service that I just created with that command file. And what we do, we run it as a local system account. And we restart. And that's it. All right, my agent is waiting. Now, next step, let's go back to my PowerPoint. You will see, yeah, maybe it's just this. It is very easy. Just download the agent, create a personal access token, so you gather all the information you need to provide to that command file, and then you execute it. And that's it. And now I have a running agent. Let's see if it's still running. F5, and yes, it's still online. So let's feed it with a pipeline. To be able to have a pipeline, obviously need code. So I also prepared that a little bit. So what I have here is actually a typical project that we would do. A product or a customer doesn't really matter. This is a typical, our typical repository looks like in our case. Now, if I would open this with VS Code, you see that I have a test folder. Now, this is actually my test app. And I have an app folder, which is my actual app. Okay, so this app, it has got an app.json, which is the app base. And this app has also an app.json, which is the test app. It's good practice to have the test app separate, but in my opinion, it should be in the same repository as well. And it's from this repository that I would like to create a pipeline. Okay. Now, first of all, obviously, I need to get that in Devops. In Devops. Oh, wrong Chrome. In Devops, let's go back to my project here. My repositories. I actually only have one repository, which is empty. Right, this is just empty. So what I will do, I will create a new repository. I don't like to use this one, and usually have multiple repositories anyhow. And I will call that the same as my app. So I will take this this one, and this will be the repository for the Waldo app base. I will create that repository, and now obviously it's empty. I will copy my commands that I need to upload my code basically to this repository. So let me switch back to my repository here. I will initialize this as a Git repository like that. I will commit this one. Well, we cannot dive too deep into how what this is and how we structure code. We could do that in the next webinar. But let's just assume we have a bunch of code here and we want to create a pipeline on that. Now I got my terminal here. I copied my commands to be able to push my code to this repository. So let's copy that again. Yes. And I will just paste that here. And that pushes my code online. Let's switch back, refresh, and you will see the code ending up here. That's first step. You need your code in Devops. Okay. Second step, to set up a pipeline. Well, what I will do is I will copy from a template that we have set up for you and set some variables, and then we should be able to go. So you see again the same GitHub repository, holder-env ALOps. I showed you the install script from that repository. Well, if we go back to the root, there are also examples, right? And you will see that we have a bunch of YAML examples. And these are actually quite interesting because it's actually a YAML description of certain steps that might be interesting. For instance, the publish SaaS step, right? But what we want to do is actually, we want to have a complete build, including tests. I got my test app, so I need to be able to run my tests as well. And for that, I'm using the latest. So I will use the version 15 multi-root version of this YAML file. Now, multi-root, you'd say, well, if you look closely, these are two app files. I will never be able to compile this workspace as it is. In my repository, I also foresee a workspace file. And if I would open this workspace, you'll see that I actually have a multi-root workspace of an app and another app, right? ALOps can deal with that. So basically what I want to tell ALOps is, okay, compile this app, publish, and compile this app, publish, and run the tests of this app. Right, so that's kind of like a multi-root repository that we have here. All right, let's switch back. So as said, I would like to start from this one. You see, this is a complete YAML that we will dive into a little bit. But yeah, first of all, this is a template. So let's take the raw one and copy everything and switch back to, not here, sorry. Oh, maybe my code, I could do that in code. Let's do that here in code. I will switch back to my workspace because what I want to do is I want to create in the root of my workspace a new file called Azure Pipelines.yaml. If you do that and you call it the same as I did just now, Devops will recognize this as your CI, your continuous integration pipeline. Just look at this. Look at the fact that I do have a repository now, because if I would switch to my build pipeline, there are no build pipelines found, right? Okay, so I have this empty file now. I can just paste the YAML code that I just have copied. Sorry. You see here in comment, I can provide a pool as well. Well, I created this pool. You saw that. You switch back and do the agents pools, and oh, this is not going to work. I need to add the product X to this pool, to this project. Sorry. And you see now I've got my agent here. So this is the pool I actually want to use. Okay. So I will copy this and I will foresee this in my pipeline. This is the pool I want to use with this pipeline. Okay, you see here that that already provided a Docker image and so on. We will dive into that a little bit easier within DevOps. I can strongly recommend to do not edit YAML files in VS Code too much. We usually edit YAML files in DevOps, and you will see why. Just show one thing: there is actually no IntelliSense. This looks like IntelliSense. It is not. It absolutely is not that helpful. It will not show you the parameters of any kind of ALOps step. So I will save this as being the template for now. And I will upload, obviously, my change now. Just so new pipeline to Devops. So this will create my pipeline in the master branch of my repository. Now let me switch back to Devops. This is not the one that I wanted. To my project. And let's go back to pipelines. Now remember that previously we did not have any pipeline here. Now, because I created this Azure pipelines.yaml file, now it does recognize a pipeline. Okay, this is the default CI pipeline for me. Okay, and if I would edit this pipeline, you will see exactly the same file, yeah, and exactly the same content that I just did here in VS Code. But here you will see already a little bit more. Just look at these settings indicator here. If I would click this one, you see that actually the task that I was setting up here is now translated on the right in yes, a visual editor, let's say, for this task. And I can immediately see some more information, some more parameters. I can actually set a parameter, add that, and you will see that it will change the pipeline. You can do that for all steps. And let's just quickly go over a few of these steps, by the way. So first, these two belong together. It will start a Docker container, completely new. You don't have to take care about the naming. We will take care about naming. Any kind of Docker step that we will do, any kind of step with Docker, let's say it like that, with ALOps, it will address always the same container. So that's why we always want to keep it as clean as at all possible. So all we want to know here is, yes, pull it as you can, but sorry, take this image. The next step is wait for it. So wait for this step to complete, actually. And it is actually waiting for this string to turn up. Obviously, we hope that Microsoft will not change that. But when this string is being noticed, then we know that the Docker container has been created. Yeah. There are more parameters, by the way, and with IntelliSense is the one that I use. Just press Control Space, and then you see all the parameters that you did not provide yet. Yeah. This, by the way, this error string is one example that came from the community, that it might be interesting, like, okay, we know when to stop, but if there is an error, I would like to catch that as well. So any kind of error string would stop a certain execute or stop the wait and basically just put the entire pipeline in error. Okay, so I'm not going to explain every single parameter here. Next step would be importing the license. So we know we have a Docker container. Let's import a license. Now this license, you see that in this case, I'm actually using a variable. Yeah. Now there's a lot to say about license files. Now, best way for what I think is to make a license file available as a download link, like just a link. And you can do that in various ways. One way, obviously, is Azure. I have my Azure open here. So what you could do is create a storage account. Very simple, like I have here, ALOps files. Create a storage container, like license files, and just upload. Sorry, I needed this. Upload some files to it, like just your license file, just an example. And from that moment, you would be able to see here this file that I have. I would be able to create a a shared access signature. You can play with how long this link will be available, but you can generate an URL, and this URL actually is an interesting URL to make as a download link for your license file. Okay, what we do, we provide that as a variable, right? So when we go to the libraries, and let me open that in a new tab, you are able to create variable groups. And I already did that. I created a pipeline variables group here. It's very simple. It's just a grouping of variables. Nothing more than that. But when doing that, you see here, you can create secret variables. So the only thing that you need to do is create some kind of name for your variable. So like this holder license file, and paste that shared access signature. Now, by default, this is not a secret. So this will show up in every single output of the pipeline. If you want to make it a secret, just simply change this to a secret. And now you will still have access to the value, but it will not show up anywhere. So now it's quite safe. Yeah. So that is one tip to handle license files. You see that I already did that. And I'm using this variable name, BC license version 15, in my pipeline. Okay, the only thing that I need to do is to make that group available. And you do that by go to triggers. Probably Devops will change that at some point. But you need this variable section, variable groups, and link that one variable group that I defined to this pipeline. Okay. Downside on this page is I cannot turn back to the YAML representation anymore. So I will save this and go back to the build and edit my build again. So I do know now that this variable, which was a variable that was part of a variable group, which is now linked with this pipeline. Okay. When we go further, you'll see that there is yet another step, ALOps app publish. This is the app, the step that publishes an app. And we actually use that to publish our own app. You see, after the compile, we're going to publish an app to Docker, and we compile the test here, and yet publish our test app to Docker. But in this publish step, which is the same, we provide just app names. These app names are already available on a Docker container. Let me just quickly run this so I can actually show the output as well. You see here that actually my agent picked up the job. You see the agent that I just set up. That basically means there should be some activity here on this server. You see here, CPU is busy. Not that busy, but it's busy. Now I'm setting up a container here and so on. I will just open the pipeline side by side here. So let me edit the pipeline again. So at some point, I'm going to publish some apps. Now, this is necessary because I want to test. And to be able to run my tests, I need the test runner. And I need some libraries to be able to compile my test app against. Okay, so, and these are all now part of not just the base app, but also some other apps. So we made it available very simple to address some apps that you would like to install. Yeah, this takes about 50 seconds, so it should continue in a minute. Now, when everything is set, all my apps are installed, all my code is there, basically, I'm able to compile. Now, what the compile will do is download symbols and use your code that you have in your repository to compile. When done, it will publish your app. Basically just publish the app that has been created from the compiler. Yeah, it does a lot more. It's going to save your artifacts. It's going to maintain the version. But these are all things I would like to cover in next webinars to go deeper into that. We do it twice because we have two apps, right? Remember, we have an app and we have a test app. So in this case, we are going to compile a test app and publish that one. We need to publish that because we need to run the tests. Yeah. And that's what we do here. We will run the tests, and when done, we will publish the results. Now you will see that the published test results is not an ALOps step. This is just a default DevOps step that we use and include in our pipeline. ALOps steps obviously can be mixed with any kind of other step that you want to include. Last but not least, and definitely not least, never forget this step. I mean, we need to clean up our Docker container that we have just built. Just imagine you have fails all over the place, and it will just create one Docker container after the other. They will keep running, and basically your agent will, be unusable with all these running Docker containers. So that's why the condition is always in any kind of state of my pipeline, error, warning, or whatever, it will always remove the Docker container that it built to run this pipeline. Okay, let's switch back to here, and you see here now that it's running through my pipeline. It's obviously the same steps. The one that I was indicating here, that to install the at.to, let me go back. That's this one. Yeah. What we always try to do with ALOps is, whenever you publish an app, whenever you address a certain amount of files, we try to show you the files. So that's the advanced logging I was talking about, almost an hour ago. In this case, we have found quite some apps on the container, and we just display them for you. And from these apps, we are installing what we indicated, these ones, right? So we would be able to use this same step to basically indicate all of these apps. Okay. So this is what we will be installing, and so on. And you will see here that it's almost at the end of my pipeline. I'm running now the tests. It successfully compiled my app. It successfully compiled the test app, published both of them. It now ran the test suite. It seems to be successful. So that's a good thing. Did I have tests? Obviously, I did have tests. You should always have tests. You see here, I have some tests, code units here. Done. So pipeline is all done. And we even have output from our tests. Let's show all of them. And these are the two tests that I've run. Cool. That brings us to the end of the session. We do have upcoming webinars. A lot of ideas actually that we would like to dive into. This was just a general overview on how to get you started and how to run your first pipeline and how to get you to the documentation. Documentation, by the way, when you would go to the marketplace, to the ALOps site, the entire pipeline and all parameters are documented. And this is actually a generated documentation. So it should never fail. If we introduce a new parameter, it should be here automatically. Yeah. So at least you have an explanation on every single parameter of every single step that is included in ALOps. For the upcoming webinars, if you have ideas on some topics, after this webcast, you will have a questionnaire, and it also asks you what topic would you like to see next. Well, if there is some topic not included, you can provide a topic as well. Either you can mail it, you can provide it in the feedback, or you can create a new issue. Do know that, and mark your agenda. Sorry, I'm a little bit struggling here with my mouse. Our next webinar will be on the 16th of February at the same date, at the same time, as today. I did go over time a little bit, and for that I apologize. Let me quickly check questions. There are no questions. It seems that everything was answered as well. So there's nothing left for me to say then. Thank you very much for joining. I hope it was useful for you, and definitely see you next time on the 16th of February. Thank you. Okay, they just told me that the 16th is wrong. I will send out a new date if that is wrong. Don't worry. It should be a Monday. I might have missed that. Okay.